Let's continue with our questions. Another question is, Uganda began a program of economic recovery under the second government of Milton Obote in 1981. And they're asking us to discuss any 6 economic reforms which Obote II introduced in 1981. Yeah, so Obote was the president before Amin came in, but after Amin's regime ended in 1979, Obote came back as Obote II. Yeah, so after that, the economy, remember, had collapsed in Amin's regime, so he had to recover the economy. And he came up with the Economic Recovery Program in 1981. Yeah, and this economy had some reforms that we introduced. And they want us to discuss any 6 reforms which Obote II introduced in 1961. Yeah, so every point that you give has 2 marks if you explain it. The first thing was floating of the economy, floating of the Ugandan shillings on the foreign exchange market to strengthen the balance of payment. Floating it means that he let the value of the Ugandan shilling to be determined by the market forces of demand and supply. So he floated the Ugandan shilling, unlike Amin who set the value. Then he dismantled the wide range of price controls. Remember, Amin had set maximum price controls in his regime. Yeah, so when Obote II came into power, he had to remove those price controls in order to recover the economy. Then there was increasing producer prices for exports. He increased the prices for exports, yeah, which increased on the revenue of the country and in turn improved on the balance of payment position. Then he introduced a dual exchange rate starting in August 1982. He introduced an exchange rate for the essential product and then the exchange rate for the non-essential products. Yeah, so he introduced a dual exchange rate. Then another one was restoration of investor confidence by persuading foreigners to return. Remember that foreigners had been chased away in Amin's regime. So for him, he convinced them to return to Uganda. Yeah, he convinced them that Amin left power, please come back and invest. Then rationalization of tax structures and control of government expenditure. They increased the tax base and they reduced on government expenditure, yeah, which improved the economy. Then he brought back the IMF and World Bank. Remember, when Amin chased agents, even the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank, they stopped giving us funds. Yeah, so Obote had to convince those people to come back. Yeah, so he brought back the IMF and World Bank. And those are the reforms which Obote II introduced in 1981. Then we look at another question. Another question says, economists explain why economics take GDP seriously despite its known limitations. Why is it that economists care about the GDP, yet it has limitations? GDP is gross domestic product. Yeah. So the reason is economists care about GDP because GDP is highly correlated or it's coordinated with the things we care about. It's coordinated with the things we care about as human beings, for example, the standard of living, the wages, the jobs, the prices, the value of the currency, or it is related with our general happiness. Yeah, because once you have a job, you'll be happy. Once the standard of living is high, you're happy. Things like that. So economists care about GDP because it's correlated with our general happiness, or it's correlated with the things that we care about. Yeah. Then another question is, discuss the main determinants of growth that Uganda should satisfy to achieve its vision. Uganda has a vision 2040. Yeah, 2040, whereby they want to transform the economy from a low income status to a middle income status and a prosperous economy by 2040. So they're asking, discuss the main determinants of growth, of GDP growth, that Uganda should satisfy to achieve its vision. So we look at the determinants of GDP growth. The first determinant is capital accumulation, whereby we have saving and investment. Once the saving rate is high and the investment rate is high, the GDP of the country will grow. Yeah, and if the consumption is also low, yeah, the GDP will grow. Then population and labor force growth. If there is a reduction in the growth of population, the economy is likely to grow, and once the labor force also grows, it will increase on the production in the country. Yeah, and once production increases, even GDP will grow. Then technological progress. Increase in technology will lead to increase in production, yeah, which in turn will lead to the growth of GDP. Then the role of natural resources. Once we have the natural resources that we can utilize to produce, because GDP is all about production. Once production is high, there will be high GDP. So once we have the natural resources that we can utilize in production, the GDP will grow. Then the role of organization, entrepreneurship, and macroeconomic management. Once entrepreneurship is high in the economy, there will be increase in production, which will lead to GDP growth. Then the role of institutions, property rights, the rule of law, impacts of taxes, and then investment in education. For example, if there is investment in education, a lot of people will be equipped with knowledge, which they'll go out there and apply. Yeah, which will increase maybe on entrepreneurship, and it will increase on production, which in turn will lead to GDP growth. Yes, so these are the main determinants of GDP growth. We have capital accumulation, population and labor force growth, technological progress, the role of natural resources, the role of organizations, and then the role of institutions. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Tap on the thanks button down there. It is in a heart form. Yeah, and thank Niche Academy in any way that you feel like.